Hi, this is Alan Rudd with the Tech Collective. Thanks for joining today. I'd like to chat with you a bit about why VPNs are dying and what this new thing called zero trust is all about. So let's go back to the beginning. What's a VPN? It's an acronym for Virtual Private Network. It's been around for 20 plus years. The whole idea was to create a secure connection across the public internet that was private. That enabled users to get to resources that weren't normally accessible only to them and definitely not accessible by the general public. There are two kinds of them today that are well known. There's the consumer ones that you may have heard of, like NordVPN, and then the commercial ones that are made by most of the classic security vendors. But if you do a quick web search in Google for VPN backdoor, it'll come up with a ton of results for just about every VPN vendor on the planet. The articles are all about flaws that are either intentionally or unintentionally in the technologies. And these things often take months and sometimes years to get patched. And most recently, one of the Chinese nation state bad actors called APT5 has been systematically exploiting vulnerable systems that have remained unpatched for a long time. The other thing about VPNs that's important is that every one of the VPN concentrators, as they're called, without exception, is deployed in such a way that it has a presence on the internet that has an open, continuously listening port. This in itself is an attack surface. As I mentioned, it can be scanned for listing ports, products, versions, etc. The last thing I'd mention about VPNs is that users tend to be over entitled on the network. Can think about what happens when a user authenticates and establishes a tunnel. That user's now got an IP address and effectively has been dropped onto the trusted network behind a concentrator. Users with an IP address can easily scan large segments of the network for open ports. This creates a broader lateral attack surface. So, as I mentioned, it's 20-year-old technology. We don't use Apple iBooks anymore. We don't use two-way pagers. Why are we still using VPNs that have been around since 1996? The other term that has come into the popular vernacular is zero trust. It's a term, I believe, that originated with Gartner, and it's based on the premise that trust is in of itself a vulnerability, and therefore security has to be defined by a business strategy that always includes things like never trust and always verify. So what's it about? There's three basic elements to the three-legged stool for zero trust. One leg says presume all networks are untrusted, meaning you have to verify each request as though it originates from an open network. Secondly, apply least privilege, not most privilege access, and you restrict access based on the minimum permissions required to fulfill a task. I call this the three R's: role, realm, and responsibility, where what's my role in the company, what's my responsibility, and what resources do I need to get to? And think about this as if, as an example, I go into my HR system and book my vacation time off, but I can't give myself a raise. Lastly, we must assume compromise all the time. So reducing risk is done by inspecting and monitoring everything all the time. So here's a simple analogy in layman's terms. I'm in a hotel at a conference, and I'm been assigned room 824. I scan my key card in the elevator. Up I go to floor number 8. I get out of the elevator, and I can see all the rooms on that floor, not just mine. Potentially and possibly, the maid may be cleaning the room, or somebody else's room, and may have left her multiple access card hanging on the trolley. I can nefariously borrow that and go into any room that I want. Here's the corollary with zero trust. I can only go up to the 8th floor, and I can only see room 824 and nothing else. So if we look at the two approaches, and I'm showing on the graphic on the right of the slide here, the typical hyperscaler and data center approach that a lot of organizations adopt, that's a hybrid environment. VPNs have a very limited ability to scale to this. There's a very heavy hardware infrastructure and design cost. It's very susceptible, as I mentioned earlier, to distributed denial of service attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, and other network-based attacks. It helps create, not prevent, a broad attack surface and allows for easy lateral movement. And there's no least privilege access. Also, the user experience tends to be poor, and VPNs tend to be latency prone. So So when you're looking at certain applications, they may not perform as well as outside the VPN. So Zero Trust created a new paradigm called the software-defined perimeter, and it uses a technology in the case of AppGate, something called single packet authorization. This makes all resources invisible to the internet. It also allows for security of users getting access to resources. We do this through something called application microsegmentation. And it also secures server-to-server traffic and prevents lateral movement using network microsegmentation. It also secures end users themselves, and especially ones that bring their own devices, with a technology called ring fencing. It uses metadata to dynamically grant entitlement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And continuous authorization and entitlement based on context and business risk is very, very important here. And it also is based on the privilege of least privilege access. So how does it work? Well, the AppGate SDP solution is comprised of three components: the controller, the client, and the gateway itself. The controller is where the brains of the system reside. It acts as a trust broker for the system and creates something called policy decision points, or PDPs. It checks context, grants entitlements, and is the first step in the process. Importantly, the gateways go wherever you need them to go to protect resources and act as policy enforcement points. And again, most importantly, the controller and the gateway are completely cloaked from the internet. It's a three-step process. When a user needs access to a resource, it connects to the controller via single packet authorization. Secondly, the controller checks context and generates a live entitlement, as we call it, that's sent to the client via an encrypted signed certificate. The client brings that entitlement to the gateway, and once the gateway is validated that the certificate has not been tampered with, it dynamically generates what we call a segment of one, granting access to the designated resource. Most importantly, AppGate SDP continuously monitors the access criteria and can adjust or revoke access on the gateway or client based on policy. So that, for instance, if I was inside a VPN and turned off my antivirus, that wouldn't bother anybody. If I did that with SDP, that would immediately be an alert and I'd be blocked from anything else on the network. The previous picture can also be expanded to any number of data centers, clouds, or hybrid environments. It allows users to connect directly to those centers without going through any centralized cloud-based bottlenecks. Most importantly, it's also a very open platform and includes bidirectional API interfaces that can help you leverage nearly any other investment that you've made, whether it's access management, identity management, directory services, security event monitoring, and so forth. It's also an open platform, and so the creation of new APIs and other interfaces are very quick and easy to do. We have 5 design core principles which make AppGate SDP so flexible and agile. I like to call this hackers can't attack what they can't see. The sophisticated single packet authorization makes your network invisible. No ports are exposed. It's people and identity centric security that adapts based on users, devices, application, contextual risk, and it builds on what we call a multi-dimensional identity profile that adapts on the fly. And it allows access only when all those criteria are satisfied. Most importantly, it's got to be dynamic and continuous. So we call this live entitlement. You can automatically modify access in near real time based on contextual changes and risk so that security risks are automatically blocked. It builds individual just-in-time based micro firewalls or perimeters, or what we call segments of one. Using a patented technology called multi-tunneling, it microsegments users, workloads, and resources and provides least privilege access to limit lateral movement inside the network. It's extensible, and it's 100% API-first technology that enhances and integrates with your technology stack and allows us to build security directly into the fabric of your business and workload. Don't take our word for it. We were named as a representative vendor in the ZTNA market guide for Gartner. Both years it's been published. We were also selected out of hundreds of applicants to be one of 18 collaborative vendors that work with the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. And last but not least, we were named a leader last year in the Zero Trust Extended Ecosystem Platform, New Wave. And in Q3 of last year, we were named a leader in Forrester's inaugural ZTNA New Wave. We're happy to share those reports with you if you'd like to see them. Just to recap, this is the world's best platform to provide zero trust for all. It's programmable, extensible, and meets enterprises' unique set of needs. Admins love it because it reduces complexity, service desk tickets, and automates provisioning access. End users love it because it's fast, it's easy, it just works. It's been architected for how enterprises and people work, and it builds security into your operations to enable work, not inhibit it. At the Tech Collective, we work shoulder to shoulder with AppGate and our customers and ensure their success. We bring our years of experience and put them to work for you. And if you're not happy, we aren't. AppGate SDP starts where you are and will help you accelerate your journey to zero trust and the path ahead. And they'll set you up for long-term success with a modern, secure access platform that simplifies your day-to-day and can adapt to secure your future. So what's next? We'd be delighted to offer you a free evaluation and test drive experience of AppGate SDP, and also a complimentary technical review with key stakeholders to understand where you are. We can evaluate and prioritize most relevant use cases, and we also can provide you with an evaluation program that shows how installations work seamlessly. I hope you find this interesting, and if you have any questions, please feel to reach out to us at the phone number on the slide or at info@thetechcollective.net. Thanks a bunch. Have a great day. Long live Zero Trust.